hybrid cannibalizing crickets. Can you believe last week's broadcast? I think that was my broadcast of all the ones I've done kind of creeped me out the most. And then this week came on. Cannibalizing crickets. Just because it's so easy to consume our own. And I don't know why that is, but there it is. We go on more this week on this programming of you and other things as we do behind the Woodshed. So for the podcast or pastcast folks, this will be BTWRLM 204, I believe. Yeah, hybrid human pig. Fascinating stuff. And thank you very much for all you got, all that did what you did to promote the broadcast. The numbers of listeners were much better this week, much more in line with when I started on RLM. Actually, we're back. This last week we were back to what I used when I transferred from Oracle. So I appreciate all the help to promote the broadcast, and anybody who can just pass it on. We got lots of places you can listen to it. The YouTube's UCY.TV or .com, .TV. I always get that mixed up. And RLM, the YouTube's, and then you have the Spreaker on RLM's account. Thank you for tuning in there wherever you can after the broadcast as I get it up for you. To, again, spread the information. Listen, it's the information. I guess this is one thing I don't know if people quite get either. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. I don't see much translation, I guess, is the problem. The information that you start to get is not just supposed to rest out there. It needs to be dealt with and worked with. It needs to be put in the mind and cognized. So we move in behind which we move from just information. I try to show you how to use this, how it gets used, what it's used for. It's already being used against you. This knowledge is what I attempt to get your mind to work to actually work with this information and then put it in practice eventually. So we're not just an information system here. That's why I said beyond the media. There's information, there's notice. What knowledge could be what? N-O-T-I-C-E is notice. Knowledge is K-N-O-W, so it's K-N-O-W-T-I-C-E. Notice, it's what you know. That's how they push this on you. As soon as you're given notice, it's that you know. In other words, it's in your mind, and you have now a duty to do something. So you're already behind 2 steps to start with when this thing comes down, and people will be out there to presume upon you that you do know. And I'm attempting here to hope. Well, I can only hope that you take the information and not use it as entertainment, or, oh, that guy sounds pretty cool, or, yeah, he's got some good ideas, but they're not workable, but I'll listen to him anyway. Whatever the reasoning is, that you'd keep tuning in. And then, for me, then you don't act. You just become these repositories of information that never really become actual knowledge. What is known to you to be the fact of things that are going on. Not just information that you can spew. I guess my problem with, like I told you a long time ago, I used to be very, very good at Jeopardy, that program Jeopardy, or Trivial Pursuit. In fact, they do that in the RLM chat right before the broadcast while Grimner's playing the blues. One day I said, why do I even know this stuff? And it wasn't really a knowing, it was just to be an information repository. I wasn't going to do anything with that information. It really meant nothing in any context other than the fact of its of existence. And it's odd the way your mind can work. I would have never guessed it to me before until it happened. Once I asked that question, it was like I went stupid on all that stuff the next day. There was nothing that I really remembered at some point. Of all the things I could remember, all the pieces and bits and parts, it made nothing to me at that. The next day, I couldn't even stand the song. I just couldn't even stand to listen to it. The Jeopardy song. Then at that point, then things came on me, and I started to have to do something with the knowledge bits that I had that were very far few, because I had lots of information, but no actual knowledge of how, well, even the context seemed to be removed. And so there's a whole process behind coming back into yourself, becoming responsible. I see a ton of people that they just won't take that up for themselves, and I don't even judge it. I just know it's not going to happen, and there's lots of excuses. And listening to Ron Stephan and Rock the Boat, 2 hours before this broadcast on UCY. Thank you again, Ron, for the acknowledgement. And you're right. I wonder, it's really getting serious. I'm wondering, with all the people I see that have information bits, we're not really stepping up. And I wonder, I say this on the air, so it's not even a secret. I wonder, what am I doing here? And then he was right again. You see, you get to a certain point, you have to. This is almost a duty, and I don't even know why I even have that, but there it is. It like becomes the calling. While the other side's doing the calling, we do the calling. So somehow it's very important. And so the last moment, it's like we're going to win in the last moment. I don't know where that optimism comes from, because I'll tell you what, it doesn't look like it's happening, folks. It really doesn't. I'm hoping. Beyond hope, there's those people out there that I never get to hear from or about, or that are out there, the younger mindset that's really going to be taking up their own gauntlet to protect themselves, or they are the critical thinkers. But I'm wondering, and today we're going to show you maybe that's going to be very difficult. As I said, it's coming to the point you won't even have the capacity, let alone you won't even have the interest. I mean, this is the other thing that I'm going to point out, I think, today. But I've been talking to you about, I've been really more concerned as I see it coming down, that the cashless society that we were talked about, it's not just about controlling the money without cash. I mean, it's without operating without cash. It's the control that's going to come behind it. And to me, this blockchain is the epitome of that, as I've explained to you. And it's also not law. It can't be. There's no evidence in it. Everyone thinks that it can be made evidence. It's not. It's just like a summary, a secure summary of what's going on. There's not actual evidence in it, even though you can see documents even in the newer stuff, the new contract-related things. Those are just the evidence that something existed, not the fact of it, if you go into the judicial side. And so this is a serious thing, and as I look out, my memory, and I had to fight to grab what I could here to get this back, to start to see what's important, totally clueless on lots of it. Being totally amazed as I watch like land disposal laws, how they even come up with that. It's pretty amazing that it came up, and when it followed the laws of nature is what it ends up being. You start to see all this. You start actually having knowledge of what natural law is. Not just that you can parrot it. I hear lots of people that can parrot this stuff, and more I get to this, and even the more I come onto it, it's really quite fascinating what we don't know, what we have forgotten. And I talked to you about that memory being lost. There's a generation coming that will have no memory of the things that ought be, and the denunciation that you'll hear in the future, and the destruction of the Constitution, in the sense that was a memory of that's a notice and filed memory archived that is denounced, because what it shows in there in certain spots, things that were natural principles that time immemorial has come up with to find out this is how you protect yourself against tyrants, tyranny, and all this other nonsense. One of which is what we call specie, money, but money not just the sense of it in the generic, or the way they kind of even legalized it, where they're now talking currency, not money. I guess anything can be a money if it has a value, but see, that's the problem. So what did the Constitution memorialize for us? In other words, that document is our memory. These writings are our memory if we've never knew it before. They say weight and measure, and a certain amount of weight and by certain measure. And in other words, we go implicitly saying it's got an intrinsic value. Something inherent in it is valuable, is missing in what we're going to in the digital realm. They even tell you it's virtual. I just like that word. It's not even that. It's some electrons. I mean, it's really. I just flashed in my mind George Carlin's the big electron. We're going back to the big electron, but we're not. We're going into the manipulations of man in parasitically pirating away other men and women of their life. under a color of authority to do so, which is a felony at every turn. It's not even, it's so clear in my mind. Once you see that definition in your own statute so that you see the black and white. Again, the black and white is going to be so important for you to get. You have to have a foundation. When you see that everything the government does to interfere with you in a natural setting, if you can say it that way, and these are all advised, these words are advisedly used since they're being co-opted as well, but getting into the natural law sense, and I don't mean you're thinking about you think you know natural law. I mean the way it actually starts to work, which is truly dog eat dog at some base level, but then there's these things that step in, that man in that, and it's in man's dominion of that starts to take the task. That if we don't have the foundation, we don't know what to do. The Constitution can be looked at as a memorializing device that we saw is money, and money is weight and measure, and the weight and measure is of an intrinsically valuable thing as well, and in durability. I don't know about you, but that doesn't fit the blockchain. That doesn't fit the cashless. It may look like it is, but it's dependent on anything, and guess what? It's not in hand, which is another implicit requirement. You have to be able to have it in hand. And so, we're seeing ourselves, the practices and habits are being changed over time. The memory is being lost of why there was a reason for the people before us that really appear to be much more aware of things than we are today. Why they said for money it needs to be weight and measure. Why all this stuff works. Why you need to be in what they call in the legal would be, well, I can't remember the term. It just flashed when it went away. But anyway, you're supposed to be in a private contact. You got to have a hand-to-hand contact in a way, not a battle, but there's a term for that in law. I've lost it, so it doesn't matter. There's a reason for why we do things face-to-face. Arm's length transaction is how it translated. That's what it was, the legal thing, the arm's length transaction. Those are also legalized and extended because corporate entities can make those so-called arm's length transactions, and the undead don't have arms, they don't have hands. And this is how they've done it. They've made a fictional world of us in the legalized system, which legalized things, entities control. All fictions, and they all do the color of authority and position, which is all crime, all the time. Unless you start getting them to work in their obligations and duties, they're working a crime against somebody. Another story here, just to get back to the progression, as I'm going along from week to week. It is never really going out. The notice to us, I've been telling you, the Cashless Society is here. It's honest. Now the governments are involved. It's not just an idea. They're looking at Bitcoin. They're looking at actually blockchains. Even the Bitcoin people, I'm wondering who they are anymore. Not the people who started it, the people who involve themselves more than a tool, a convenience tool. They're actually pumping this electron up. They are the cause of going to be the breaking of the memory of why you have something intrinsic in hand that you can trust, actually trust, not create a legal trust, but the trust in the substance. All these things are pouring down on us, and we don't recognize the need to hold on to them. They are the natural law of how we work with each other being destroyed in us. And we don't recognize it. It's really a serious, that's the thing I see that I don't understand how we're going to get beyond that. So I have to leave that up to something else, somebody at whatever else. I hope Providence will step in. You have to get to the very bottom, I guess, before you can decide to crawl out. That's not for me to decide. That's part of why I don't really get too judgmental. I just hope that I look out and I see the destruction and hope at some point people will just say, enough's enough, let's get going. And they find, like as I can cognize it, they find the wrong they need to be made right. It's the only way I can understand we each do this, and we each have to do this. I'll go on a little bit more. A guy, talking to a gentleman this week with our mining association, and he says, he's like, I guess suppose I can use the term emotionally distraught at the corruption he's finding when he engages it. And I said, good, you have to see that. You have to go through that to get beyond opinion. You have to know how it's corrupt. Not just that it's corrupt, not just to talk about it. You have to know, and then you'll only see the little part you engage. So the more you engage, the more you see. But you have to know this, not just say it. You just have to be, and I don't mean just run down in your ignorance. I mean when you go after it, when you can read the black and white and you can engage this thing right by the standards that are supposed to be, and you see what was supposed to be protective in the government on the good side. And you see all the people that are involved and how they're involved on the inside, that they've taken it over. You now start to understand what the battlefield is. And until you do that, you're not really going to be able to understand what I'm mentioning, talking about, directing, suggesting, or any of that stuff. You'll just prejudice yourself, and you'll try to do it on your ignorance, essentially, when you think you're all in knowledge. And this is the serious problem. You think I'm judging you. I'm not. It's just the natural course of things. It's by experience I'm talking here on this point. But I said to the gentleman, you need to experience this, not just be told about it. And you need to understand. Then I just suggested to him, when you see this destruction that becomes this destroyed battlefield world that you don't perceive, that they've got hidden from you, then you are in the first steps in order to be able to address it. And then I suggested that that's what was helped in what he was seeing, this distraught nature in seeing that the system around you is not just corrupt and bad and criminal. It is your life. It is what controls your life, and there's no escape from it at all in some regard, at least the way we're told. That I said this thing informed me and us in our lawsuit on how to destroy it, how to take it out, make it irrelevant, and then to expose the underlying truth, which then gets us to today, and what I've said here in the broadcast. And I found, I didn't know, I just happened to run across it. I guess I needed to see it then. Someone before us said the very same thing. It was Thomas Jefferson saying it's the mass of people have to be educated. And through their action, you will just throw off these tyrannies. That's not my rule, folks. That's not my imposition. That's just a natural progression of things that was recognized by a man a couple hundred years ago. And so we better take our leads where we can get them, and we better understand them more than just being able to read and remind ourselves by memory. We have to understand that there's a working thing behind all of this stuff. And these people, let's move over to who knows that. They work that against you. So if you don't know that, and even if you do, they're still working it against you. But if you don't know that, this is the condition of cluelessness. And so then you're susceptible to whatever you're suggested to. And then I'm telling you, as we see the notice coming to us, what they call the news, this notice is telling you that capacity in you, not really, man, yeah, it is you, and your little ones, is going to be diminished. If you don't quite get, the ant colony discussion I said a while back, I said, that's you. That ant colony is you. And they were talking about epigenetic changes. And I said, that's real time. And then we got some evidence now, folks. This is no joke. You can be changed in a moment. And we see evidence of it in vaccines. The pure little healthy babies in one injection, within the time it takes for the body to assimilate the toxin, responds to it that fast, is how fast you, with all your intelligence and all your knowledge and all your resistance and all you think you are, can be changed forever. So let's move on to that. But getting back to the blockchain, the money, this is, I want to show you how again, it's not, some of you are aware, I'm not saying that you're not, I'm just saying that we got to take notice, we have to have the knowledge this is being done on purpose, and we have to start to put it in us on how we're going to respond, or what we can do to become, I guess, put ourselves in a position to be less controlled by it, less affected by it. HDFC Bank begins to levy cash transaction fee. And this important about this is in India. And what they do now in a bid, as I explain it right in the first paragraph, in a bid to discourage cash transactions, from March 1st, customers carrying out financial transactions at HDFC Bank branches will have to pay a fee if the number of transactions exceeds beyond 4. Won't read any more. It's just a notice to us. And now we have transaction fees, but here they're doing it with the knowledge that they're going to reduce those actions. They want you to stop using cash. This is also the same country that have instituted, starting to look at the blockchain, that changed overnight their money system, their paper money system. If you're not paying attention to this and not figuring out, you all need to pull out of these institutions that have been made for you, and then I suggest all other institutions as well as best you can, and then as you can make the record to do. Certainly your financial or monetary dependence has to be broken here. This is now, you're watching how they do it. We are been systematized in the United States to already have transaction fees. But you notice they're now, and they have been reducing that you can take out money. And how much? If that doesn't tell you that you're not in control of your own future and your money, what you thought was wealth, and that it really wasn't wealth, and how can it be? It's debt. Folks, listen to what they do to us. Listen to the memory we listen to what we don't listen to. We want to spout all this natural law and all this independence, and we don't have the first clue of how to be that. And someone like myself comes along and says, I think I see some stuff here, folks. I got some stuff here you need to really listen to and start practicing, learn how to practice it, and you're going to be up against a tough, there's a big resistance against this, and then you fight with me. And that's not going to help. That's not going to work for anybody. If we fight amongst ourselves. That's exactly what they want. Transaction fees don't sound like a lot. We already pay for that. We're already taxed on our working with a system that's not made for you. And we in the United States are probably the worst at recognizing the danger. And I want to point out to you, you're watching in India how they take a society into, it's no man's land. Literally no man's land. It's legal. It's no man's land. It is the controlled slave plantation system right down to what you do every day. See, the other thing is, I don't know if people paid attention to this. When you have these development banks, what they're talking, and then you see the smart growth and this and that, they're actually going to take the third world nation status to the disadvantage of the people, because when they come in with the system, they're going to upgrade. Everyone's going to think it's a great deal to be living in housing that's provided and money that's provided and all these things that are provided, but they're going to be, the technocrats will have moved in, and every bit of your life is going to be controlled, and you're going to think that's a good thing. What they do now is they get you now they get your mind working in the places that are developed, and they start to make you feel guilty about how much you have, and they start telling you how you ought to live in the future. And that means you have to come into compliance with all these other things, and they bring it in on you the opposite way. And you will fall for it. So my problem here is we're seeing they're levying cash transactions. It must be that wealth, that's not wealth, that's really debt, and they're charging you for it. This is how it starts to work, to limit what you think you can do and what you're going to do. And I can only suggest, if you have developed a system that's independent and work with people hand to hand, not in combat, in peace, and really it takes a lot of work to do this because we're so far away from it. Develop your local lines and start really working. And I don't do this. I don't have anything to do it with, and so it doesn't really matter. But notwithstanding my inabilities, you have stuff. Start working over into that independent means of specie. Get back to the silver, at least silver money for sure. Gold to store the wealth, not for profit, and it may even lose a little bit, but it won't lose as much as nothing. When there's a vape, as I was listening last night in confusion somewhat, how does the emotional chaos support the value of an electron? You see destruction on no matter how valuable that appears in people's mind. It's a perception. It has no actual value. It is the control shift for everyone. It gets them into thinking that there's something there. It entices us into the risk. It entices us into the speculation, and now we're sort of trapped. We're trapped because we're back into that addictive thing. We went away from the foundation. We're engaged in a mutual insanity, essentially. So we also get into this corollary with this digital currency, the shift into cashless, which seems so far off. 30 years ago seems so far off, and look at just in a couple of years, it's like not like it is here. You have governments actually working with it. They're actually going after your property with it. This blockchain. I guess When you know, I'll have to, without sounding so arrogant, when you know a bunch, you see a whole bunch more. Now, I don't know what I don't know, and I don't know how little I know. I just know what I see, and what little I see then, just put it to that, what little bit I see is somewhat terrifying for you all if you're not really responding against this thing. It's creeping up on you. So they affect you in your finances. They go after everything that you need in life. The natural law they're going after, these parasitic pirates, is everything you need in life. And you're choosing to fulfill their plan because you're not invoking and protecting your own. And the blockchain is this, it doesn't work on its own. It's not intrinsic. You have to have a computer system and a network for it to work at all. I hope you're understanding this. This is not an intrinsic value whatsoever, and you may be blocked out of it. Now, let me just clarify. To me, it looks like Bitcoin's more like a gift card to me. It's a neat and an efficient and cheap way to transfer funds that people, I think, couldn't trust in that level. To me, this is more like a credit card, the way I used a credit card way back when I would use it for convenience. I go and I'd go and do some business or something somewhere. You get lots of expensive. All of a sudden, you don't want to carry that cash, or you can carry more in a piece of plastic. And so I would go through and use the credit card to go through and make my trip so much more efficient and easy. And when I got back, I sat right down and within a day, I'm writing on my receipts, writing checks back into transfer the money into those accounts. It was a convenience tool, not a source for money, not a source of currency, not a source of wealth, a storage of it, not even an anticipation that it would be there more than the time that I used it as a convenience tool. That's what I see the blockchain really as. You might need to get money out of China into somewhere. That's okay. Get it out and get it into something substantial. That might be the better smart thing to use blockchain for. But to rely on it as a national or local currency, to have to do exchanges through it requires a whole system which is not intrinsic to itself either, and it's susceptible to breakdown. Which brings up another point here. Someone talking about, okay, I get it. None of my data is safe. But I did something nasty that helps a lot. So I'm putting this on, okay, this is an insight to somebody that admits that your data is not safe. It means your Bitcoin's not safe. Your digital life is not safe. And we've talked about this over and over. The subtext on this says healthcare providers, insurers, colleges, tax accountants have your crown jewels. They get hacked all the time. So, again, you're plugging yourself into a system where you're susceptible and vulnerable to all their ignorance on their own systems. And so this brings up the other things about the blockchain that it's still being, there's nothing digital that can't be messed with, I guess is the point. And that's your future. That's your life. And so this is a poignant discussion. And I think, so the blogcaster will have this page you can read for yourself. And they focus in on the fact of certain data that's available, in particular any birth certificate and social security number. Birth date and social security, not the birth certificate. But that's out there for people, and that's the very information that you need when you're plugged into the system in order to get you through the system. Without it, you're dead in the water. You got to understand that. But what this gentleman did, if I got that correct, there is in this system, they put you in the system of debt and your ability to be a bigger debtor. They have this credit system, which is a debt system rating. You have a debt system rating. They call it credit, but it's debt. Debt, there's no difference here. It's a debt system. Whatever they call it credit, it's just your ability to absorb debt is what your rating's about. And it gives the notice to the industry that they can kind of trust in that valuation in order to go ahead and give you more load you up with more. That within that system, within the ability to protect yourself because your data is vulnerable, and within the concept of having to pay out or pay anything through those systems, and someone being able to tap it, there's something you can do within that credit system. I don't know how many people. See, I've not touched all that for so long, and I don't even know what all is there. The most thing I have to deal with people is you better understand your Federal Debt Collection Practices Act, and right in there, there's all kinds of remedies for you against all these people that come against you or do whatever this is. But there's this credit rating that you can go that you have that these private companies have also, and vulnerabilities to that. But you can put a hold. You can make your own claim against. It's called a credit freeze against yourself, which puts the whole system of that data into a protection system, which you might consider. And then all of a sudden now you don't get all those money requests, because now you have a self-imposed. Your consent is withdrawn from having the credit system continue to be used on your behalf, and you put a credit freeze on your own account, and that then stops all these pre-approved things, that stops anybody from being able to access your credit system and your account. That people that are doing this are finding it's like a big relief. It's a big release. They aren't subject to all this nonsense and noise and threat, and now they have to turn around and start becoming more like men and women. They have to do more responsible things, and they definitely have to work more locally. You're not able to use that credit, that leash, the debt. Master, not a debtor, be. This little phrase I put together a long time ago when I figured out what was going on. Master. You can't be a master of your universe if you're a debtor, if you owe anybody anything. You are subject to those obligations and duties. And so you have to consider that. You can't, for all you sovereign, free men on the land, all this sovereign citizen, that oxymoron, sovereign citizen, you aren't, folks. Stop. You're just not. You deal with anything you're dealing with anything that attaches to an obligation and duty, you're subject to that much. And if you're tied into the financial system, the legal system, which is now protecting that legal system protects that fiction as well. You are not a master of your universe, if I can say. You're not a master. You're a debtor. Master, not a debtor, be. You can't be a debtor and be a master. Hope I said that enough times. And this is when I started realizing this, what I tell you, and when I looked at the land disposal laws as obligations and duties and the establishments of legal trusts, and the trusts that are so powerful that they control the government itself. Not a control on you. The legal control is on the fiction. The trust, the relationship that needs to protect you through land disposal is the master is no longer the sovereign state you've heard about. It is in the debtor, the obligated stance. And when you start to understand what I've been saying about this, whether or not the criminal in the office is going to recognize that, which they won't, which is another side of this problem, but you still stand on the high ground, not in the stinking abyss, and they are still obligated, even in that usurped capacity. You'll start to understand that the obligations and duties that's owed to you by the government through its contracts puts it in the debtor side to you, by and through those obligations and duties to you. Makes the sovereign no longer master. And I hope I said that a little slower, so maybe some of you pick it up, is what I saw develop from finally being able to see that you're not a master when you're a debtor in any capacity. You're always subject to what you owe there, and that's going to throw out that should throw out a whole lot of sovereignty in lots of people here. We're in a system that we may have our own say, but it's going to have a limit, and you're not sovereign to the extent of that limit. And this is why I say you have to regard all assertions of authority, but you have the power to challenge it immediately. And then you see whether or not it's authorita. We come with the authorita in the first instance when you realize it in proper way, not by knowledge, not by information, how the one that's talking to you is an authorita right from the get-go. In those regards, then you know how to challenge it as well and call them on the carpet for those that know how to do that. Instead of talking lots of nonsense, you get right to the point of it. So, someone found out about the debt system, found out you put a credit freeze. Now, what is that? Nothing but rescinding your consent to be subject to a debt system. And again, read the article. I'll send in the broadcaster like I do. Again, takes a couple hours to set this up after the broadcast. And I appreciate that you all check it out, because I know that if you're of a clear mind and starting to pick up the details here, you're going to be a lot more formidable in your redressment. You have right of redress, right? Your redressment of these wrongs against us, whether they be criminal or treason or whether they go to the other side and just immoral or just simply a big, giant, bad mistake that really ought not have never happened by somebody against you. You're going to be a little bit better to defend yourself. So this digital world is virtual. It's used in every capacity as another constraint, and in every capacity because of computers' ability to do pattern recognition, able to contain and identify you in the way they want, for the future they want, is why the technocratic view is very prevalent in our life and why it can be focused on. Again, I think it's a tool more than the end. There are other people that will say it's where we're going, and I'm not so sure that's the case. But then again, I'm not so solid I'm not willing to make anything absolute. When I noticed how everything was so fluid and changing, that we live in this construct that continues to be changed as those with a plan see their having resistance being met against. They will adjust. So we don't, I've decided we look for our foundation, we look for our narrow path. I've done that by finding, in one way, to find the soil disposal law. We'll defeat them at every turn, and we assert that. We don't even accept their ability to question it. And that's a felony as well. And all of a sudden, you start to make right in lots of places what you may not have known before was offered to you as a wrong for your acceptance, put you in debt. You go into debt into somebody when you allow them a decision over your life. It's that fast how we do this. Now, we can have our agreements between us and as our, the interactions amongst ourselves that create our interrelations, if you will. But it's not, we're talking about we're talking about addressing a power that can literally kill you. And this power is using digital technology, and not that, I don't have a problem with it if it uses a good tool for you, but this is the stuff we're talking about. We're given notice that they're using it against us, and they, as we said before, they up the pressure, and more people get. They are agreeable to this, and their behavior, where they may have been resistant before, their behavior changes to accept it. I wanted to go through a couple more things. I don't hear everybody challenging this too much. There was one guy that does that at his website. I keep Corbett or something, not James Corbett, but something close to Corbett. He's on this civil rights or the rights that you have and travelers. Well, see that he's doing that. He's giving you information, but there's really no one addressing it. He does FOIAs, which is good to get the information, as I've told you. You can get some information that way, but you really need to figure out a way to address it. On the agency side, you have agency record, and so you have a way to address this with a more limited exposure to jeopardy. Although if they get really angry at you, as we found out, the FBI will jump all over you and try to blame you for things that don't even exist. They make stuff up. And so this is where another thing, you have to realize that they're going to do that and anticipate that they're going to do that. Stop thinking not just that you say, oh, the government's corrupt, but how they're corrupt. And anticipate how they are corrupt and how they'll come against you, and you can defeat a lot of that as well, as we do regularly over years. It's continuously proven what I'm telling you can happen. You don't have to jeopardize yourself. An administrative side is very easy to not jeopardize yourself at all, especially where this, TSA, DHS, they're already thinking that you're an enemy combatant anyway. What do you have to lose but make the record that you're not? I hope you heard what I just said there. What do you have to lose than to make the record that you're not? Is the record you have to establish that shows that all their nonsense has no basis, not even legal basis. So moving on to the digital world that you're constrained to, this debt that we owe now is being used against us and as a tool against us. DHS quietly testing mandatory facial recognition on passengers exiting the United States. Now, there's lots of questions. We can go on and on. I'm not here to do the machinations of what we could talk about. I'm here to tell you that this is what they're noticing us. They're going to do mandatory facial recognition. Well, we always know that mandatory is really not so mandatory when you can show a better right, a vested right. This word vested now is becoming more the terminology that is coming prevalent that I've been talking about all this time. People are now more using it. These vested rights, they pre-exist the authority control, and you have to know how to get to that and put that up against their current legal control. Your vested authorities, your laws, your rights, your privileges, whatever you want to call them, are in law. The legal imposition is not. And so there's the thing. As I think I just flashed. I was talking in the UCY chat to Ron in the court case. I said, well, why don't you throw in on this court case, throw in a quo warranto, challenge the judge over on 2 points over the rights of vested rights that the man has, and the man himself with those rights. What jurisdiction does a legal court have over vested properties, rights, interests, that thing? And you'll find that they don't have any. But now they may lie about it. There's no, like I said, there's no silver bullet here. But at least you make the record that they can't show how. And that could be a big deal, at least for the outer world to see, as we've done in our other lawsuit about suing the bar and showing that they didn't want to even answer that. They can't. They don't have authority at all. No power, no nothing. It's a crime. It's an international crime. It's a war crime. It's so high a level of violation. But DHS is quietly testing mandatory facial. So mandatory is if you can have a higher right. This is what the administration does. Administration, your due process through administrators, you making the record that they are failing to provide the things that they were obligated to provide. And that's why I tell you, you got to head the real hard discussion off at the pass. They're saying national security or United States interest is the thing that gives them the power, and that's a difficult one to beat. And I'm looking at it and say, well, that's why I said you have to challenge that interest is a fraudulent pretext. In other words, it's a felony. They're putting a color of authority, which is a very difficult one to kill, to take out. National interest, national security. But you say it's a pretext, and you better have some proof to give the probable cause that it's that way. And then you go up and say, but you didn't have the right to interfere in your even if it's not a pretext, with my vested authority, my vested rights and powers. You make a record for that. So that's where the mandatory thing is. It looks like it's a have to, but it's really not. Like must under administrative law isn't shall. Must is only those that have to, not everyone. Shall means everyone. So all these words, these legalized things, if you understand what you're looking at, see, I'm reading and I'm qualifying things and I forget. Most people don't know how to do that, and so I kind of talk in things and forget, and you all don't get it. Some of you do. And you have to be doing the work, so thank you very much for doing your own work for yourself. I do appreciate that for you. I'm just thrilled when I hear that. But the mandatory facial recognition of passengers, another word, exiting the United States. I don't want to get, again, all this stuff we can talk about. The point is that they set up something in the way you get down. They explain how this works. They have a bunch of armed people, military types, and they will be, right at the end of a cattle call, a cattle channel, and then they'll impose upon you to look in a machine for even a tenth of a second, whatever it is, a third of a second, and they're going to get your face. And they're building a database just because of your travel. And they do it on a presumption that was established, I think wrongly, through since 2011, that all needs to be challenged before you go there. How many of you are going to do that? Probably zero, but I'm going to talk to you anyway, hoping one does this. Go team up with the guy that's doing the website that knows all about your rights, and then you take those and put those in the administrative capacity, and you say, okay, what's the standard? The standard, in summary, is only that which is enough regulation in order to do what they need to do, to stop the thing that they're claiming is the harm. And the problem is, that doesn't attach to someone who hasn't been shown to be a harm under law. And so you have a defamation going on about they're presuming upon you that you have to be in that line, that you have to go through all this. And no one wants to make these records and challenge them outside the courts or outside the line when they have to go somewhere. They'd rather fight with me and then complain later, or not go and not use it. Now, have I done much? Well, no, I don't have a plan to travel very far, very much. I don't have the ability to. There's no need for me to go anywhere. And so I've got my fight going, my fights that I have, and my things that I'm doing, So I'm all done up, folks. I got nowhere else to address this. But the principles I use against all the agencies I'm up against and fighting now, not really fight. It's really not a fight. It's just exposing the criminality. Is the same thing you can use as I give you when I talk to the Behind the Woodshed on how to go about doing this. Each one of you, like the DEA and the cannabis and all the transportation stuff, everyone wants to complain about all this stuff and doesn't understand there's a process that we are in a prison state. You have to come to terms with that. And so I say, okay, how are you going to, now when you finally see it's a prison state, you still look in the prison and say you've got communication lines. Now that's what you have. What are you going to do? How are you going to work it? And if you're not, then you're not part of a solution that you want to think you have. You're part of the problem because you walk as the accessory to the crime against you and you give the example of being that to everybody else. So it's not so simple here. For those that would rather not, I don't like any of this, but this is where we find ourselves. That they will have heavily armed, dressed military types, U.S. Marshals at the end of a gangplank, cattle chute, that they will insist on your face as you leave the country. And now that ties into more about you being tossed out because you didn't pay your taxes. Another legal status you haven't undone administratively, given that you have that. And we haven't even got to the fact that you are supposed to be free in your right to travel. See, their imposition is through national security, but you haven't made the record that not only is that a pretext felony, but it's also a defamation against you to put you in the class where they don't have a probable cause to believe that you are. That's just two of them. There's a whole bunch of these things you can throw and stack on once you start learning what the standard is, because that what they're doing is beyond what they need in the absence of any actual cause, in the absence of any probable cause. They have no cause to start making databases of you when you have the right not to associate with them. You have the right not to be defamed, not to be subject to hacking, not be available to some bureaucrat's action because he just doesn't like the look on your face or the action you take or the statement he can find somewhere on some internet social group. You don't need to be subject to that, and they have no power to put you underneath that kind of obligation and duty by their action where they don't have an actual lawful cause. Why isn't anybody starting this list? And I'm just giving you a summary that comes off the top of my head. When I sit down and start reading the black and white, I almost can copy and paste how they're not doing it right. In fact, I do copy and paste the relevant sections to say, here, this is the law you failed. This is the literal legal that you didn't even meet. Okay, I'm pausing. I talk too fast sometimes, I guess. I'm attempting to show you that there's, if you don't come to the terms that you're in a prison, an open air prison, you're under a military occupation, you're in your major constraint, and you just blab about it, you just complain about it, you're not doing anything. You're not doing anything to help yourself or those around you. And if you don't care about those around you, then it's still yourself. You're not doing anything against yourself, and you're just getting along. And that, I guess, can be done, but that's not okay. If you enjoyed a little bit of what society was offering you, and it was really in the innocent side, then there's some obligation at least to those that are your progeny to protect, because we're coming to the time when that's going to be impossible. What they're doing in this is controlling your behavior. They're allowing this agenda. You think that Agenda 21's just Agenda 21 and the way it's identified? No, the military is advancing it. They're coming in through the laws that are created by the lawyers, which promote it. And now when I say Agenda 21, I'm talking about a centralized foreign global central structure, which requires central money, central controllable rules section, all that you can't get at, that is spoken through representatives, so-called, in that mob rule they call democracy. It's mob rule by definition under military rule is democracy. Now, mob rule is one guy or one woman more than half saying that you don't get to have what you had because they want it. We don't live in that in the United States. And nobody should suggest it to anybody. We can put terms on it, but what it is, the function is, you become ruled by a mob, which ultimately is ruled by a few. Just like we have today, and it was never supposed to be. The Republic, if we could keep it. Do you remember that one? So, behavior they're controlling. Now they got your face. Now they want facial recognition. You think your state didn't do real ID and denounced it? No, they're making it up for all you passengers. You got to really understand the connection. That is Title 49 in the federal as well. Not only are they doing facial recognition for those exiting the country because they want to keep you in your prison if you haven't paid them their plunder. U.S. airport pat-downs are about to get more invasive. TSA reacts to a study that found weapons making it past security. That's a self-inflicted wound, folks. And what they'd use, I told you this a long time ago, they'll use this to make the constraints and the intrusions even greater. And here it is. It took them a few years, but they finally got to it. All those failures that their agents did to not stop the 97% of the, or 70% or whatever the weapons that the government tried to sneak by, they didn't see, they're now using that against you. This is despite the fact that notwithstanding whatever high rate of failure the TSA committed against finding weapons, there has never, ever been a weapons-related or bomb-related action against an aircraft, a passenger, or anything that wasn't also, I'll add another caveat, wasn't also inspired by the FBI itself. Notwithstanding the fact that they fail to find most weapons that are snuck in intentionally, there has not been an event that warrants what they're doing to begin with. Better be one of the line items you put on your statement that says that this process, this more invasive process, does not meet the objectives where they objectively know that none of the weapons have ever done anything. There is no threat. Now you're proving the pretext, aren't you? You're building the case against their pretext of why. Okay, I'm going to say it. I know it sounds bad. Why isn't anybody else thinking about this? Why doesn't anybody put this to paper and become that resistance? Is it so hard? I don't know. I'm literally asking questions. What is the consensus out there about this? Why do you work as a pack and deny it? About to get more invasive. So how much more invasive is it going to get? They're already grabbing your junk and your hoo-hoo and your hoo-ha, whatever. Your ooh-la-la. How much more invasive does it get here, folks? And this is a behavior that they're going to get from you because no one's stepping up, and even on behalf of others. And so then, just as I'm reading these things, and this week, again, as everything seems to come on, there's a thing that come around, like that revolution we were talking about in the chat room, the revolution, you start identifying what things that come around go around. Again, it's just around and around. This revolution is an unbroken wheel that we have to break. They want us in the revolution because it's going to bring us right back to the control structures that caused us to go in the revolution because we ain't figured it out. That along the lines of this behavioral control, I was reminded of a video that came through. It was actually an expanded video that contains a prior video of something that at the time, and this is how you kind of go back over your information and re-listen to it. I wonder, well, I've already seen this video. Why is it here? Well, I went back and listened to it, wasted 5 more minutes of my life, but right in the first minute, I think it was, they explained something I hadn't quite put together the way I conceive of it and have knowledge about it now. See, there's just information out there, but now I have a knowledge about it, how it works in the context. In a Pentagon meeting, you may have seen the video, there's someone pitching their plan to control terrorism. And in this video, and you'll get the link, it says a Pentagon vaccine designed to modify behavior was the list. At the time, I mentioned about this, but it didn't become as important as I'm saying it today, or this week, where they are modifying your behavior at every turn in this series of things I'm talking about is about how they're doing that, and it's going to be beyond, as I told you before, I now have the proof, that it's beyond your ability to stop it at some point, given you take certain actions that you're told to do. That says right in this video, in a Pentagon plan, a program that was supposed, they were pitching the deal to get some money to do this, that they'd already figured out that they could use a vaccine to alter your DNA to change your religious beliefs. Now, you expand that, if they can do that, they can do about anything of your perception. They can adjust any type of perception. Now I want to go back to the point that I had missed, the importance of it. And I've talked about it before, and I referenced it the ant colony discussion, that they were telling us in that ant colony study that was about you, that they can take environmental chemicals and change your genetics over time. This was done and presented to us in 2011 based on a video that was taken in 2005. We're seeing it in 2011, talking about vaccine-driven genetic change to alter your behavior, your perception, and therefore your behavior. This is real time. This is beyond overtime. This is only in the time it takes for your body to metabolize this control, this toxin that targets your DNA. They physically change your DNA in real time, folks. Hadn't really thought about it this way. It was just information. Now it's becoming knowledge. This has been already in the works. This starts to harken back into the vaccines, which are added on. This is an 11-minute, not the 5-minute original, but an 11-minute video, where they have a bunch of doctors talking about the harms of vaccines. It's not about vaccines. It's about you being able to be changed in your DNA. Really think about this, folks. Your literal DNA, what makes you who you are, how you're zipped together, is unzipped. And it's re-zipped the way they want it in a vaccine. Not about the vaccine. It's about that you can be changed, like you see the little babies getting a shot, and within 24 to 48 hours, they aren't who they were before. We see the negative. This, designed to modify your behavior, wasn't even perceivable to you. You just would think differently about your religious beliefs, or what you cared about would just change. You'd go to sleep and you'd wake up having different perceptive thoughts about these items. Came again to remind me what I didn't perceive as important, that about our inability. When I look out and I'm just amazed, dismayed at our lack of care, our lack of ability to understand, our lack of ability to be motivated, our lack of ability to have faith in ourselves, our own religion, if I can say that, our own what's right and wrong. Where is our moral compass? Well, folks, your behavior may be beyond you now to control. And if I'm talking to you and you're hearing this, you might be able to remember now, because now you don't have the DNA to do it, you might remember that you have to have a moral compass, and you better find the foundation, because they've stripped you, they've taken a tool away that was given to you in order to do that. If you think I'm nuts, or you think that I'm not talking to you and your faith and your belief and your system and how you work the world, maybe you should consider you've got a problem. And I say that without judgment. I say that without aggrandizement to me, because I still got enough to learn, but I've seen some things that when we put in practice works. Why is there resistance to that? Has to be a question, and I start to wonder, why don't people what happened to generations of people that grew up with me? Where did they go? Why don't they have the same basis and foundations of thoughts? Why have they given up? Why don't they care? Why are there a lot of questions and diversity and people not having identities in themselves? They've lost their sexual identity, which becomes identity politics. They've lost their desires in certain ways. They're neutralized. They got no foundation. This video came back in a bright light when the first few moments saying that this vaccine changed the DNA. It proved what I was telling you before, that all this epigenetic news this notice was telling you that they have the ability, those that do this, have the ability to change you over time, and it's a short time. Now I see it's within a metabolism speed. And you see it in the babies. You see this, what's happening to you, potentially, on this plan to eliminate the religious beliefs of people that they wanted to say were terrorists because of their extremist view in Islamic terms. If they could eliminate that with a vaccine, then they would have people that wouldn't be so, if at all, virile in their objection, wouldn't even have an opinion. That I want to point out to you the other source of this, not a source, but it's an acknowledgement more than anything else, of this behavioral constraints that are put on you over time was external by the TSA. It's internal by this little video suggesting to you that someone's pitching the fact. They got all the studies to show you how this works. They can literally take a vaccine to change your DNA. You got to think about that. You really got to slow up and think about that. And how do you know if it hasn't already happened? I've told you there's going to be a time in the future you won't have the capacity. We may be already here. Now, I'm sitting here telling you that, and I'm thinking, well, what happened to me? But what's interesting in my life, I told you, I was maybe blessed, even though it seems it was a big frustration in my life. I was blessed to have a fever that normally kills everybody, but me and maybe a couple other people in the world. I've done reports on it, that people die within 4 days with what I had. I'm sitting 2.5 weeks after having a 108-degree fever for most of that time, for 2.5 weeks, in front of a doctor that's just sitting there staring at me, can't figure out why I'm still alive. And that was 20 minutes after him researching the books. He couldn't figure out what the heck it was I had, because everybody else would have been dead if it was what he thought it was. Well, I suspect now that fever messed me up. It messed up my brain. It put everything in a fog, if I can put it that way. What that did, I didn't have all this. Remember that trivia I was talking about when I started realizing, why do I know all this trivial information? This disjointed, non-contextual stuff? Well, it took almost my entire life, and it put it in a foggy room. Well, after fighting with that for a long time, and that was really difficult, because you kind of knew some stuff, but you didn't know what it was. It was just like in a fog. It felt like a foggy room. And then you open the door. One time I got the door open, and I opened up, and I got to the light switch. I flicked it on, and the room was full of a fog. And that fog inside that fog was my old memory. I knew it was there, but I didn't know what it was. But you know what? I finally came to terms. I said, well, I can't make this fight. It's really not working. And I said, I'll just make new memories. I'll make a new thing. And that's when I turned on to all the stuff from that got to us to now. I was cleared up of all the other pretextual things in my life. And I focused on something new, and then things guided me. And I liken that to the fact of my fever killed off anything biological, anything that was interfering with any kind of pre-programming that I may have had. I just liken it this way. Whether or not it really happened, it doesn't matter to say so, just as an analogy. I fried everything. I was such a high fever, there was no biological constraint that could live inside me, and I survived it. That gave me, it kind of cleaned the slate a little bit, and then I had to start writing on that slate of my life that allows me to be here to see things in certain ways. That I liken this idea that vaccines can change your DNA as a immediate pharmaceutical change to what happened to me with the fever. It puts you in a fog. And I'll tell you, you don't even care about the world around you. You're interested in that fog. Why can't I remember things? Why don't I know this? Why don't I know that? I know it, but why can't I recall? You're not even interested in your own life. You're interested about you trying to figure out why you don't understand your life. Is what I can see very clearly here. What these vaccines can do, and it can come not by vaccines. So I keep saying, don't focus on the vaccine delivery. They found out it can become through the common cold. Okay, how simple this becomes, which means it can be made aerosolized, and so you will not know that you've been modified. Is really a terrifying thought in my mind for you all. Somehow I'm able, until I'm not. I'm able to continue remembering all this stuff and see how all this stuff ties together to keep telling you every week. And I'm hoping you go get in the practice, and maybe that habit will be what survives in you, that maybe some pharmaceutical may have been working on against you. Let me take you back why this behavioral control is all prevalent. It was stated, at least referenced in what what's been called the Club of Rome. It's been suggested it's a premier environmental think tank, a consultant to the United Nations. And there's a statement. And listen for the word here right near the end. Don't go to sleep on me in this paragraph, because it's right at the end what their objective is. And now I've known why, but now I see more direct connection to why. And now it can be done in real time, within 20, 30 minutes of your body assimilating this stuff. This can go to work on you. This is evidence that they have the technology to take away your DNA that causes you and allows you to do certain things, which means you can't feel or perceive, or then you'll change your behavior based on that, or respond, or care, or whatever. The common enemy of humanity is man. Think about the terms. I tell you, humans are animals. And these are the ranchers of the humans speaking, or those that believe that they are. This common enemy of humanity is man. You being a man or woman is the enemy to the animal nature in you and those that want to control you. Right in the first sentence. But that's not even the point. So I guess the part, if they can get they get you to behave like an animal and not like a man, they're gonna win. And the object of this is in the closing part of this statement, how they're going to take you out. Another reason why I'm trying to get you active into some line of action for yourself, because I think that habit, the new ritual in your life, will break through whatever programming that they've been trying to do us on many different levels. Going on, it says, well, first, the common enemy of humanity is man. In searching for a new enemy to unite us, we came up with the idea that pollution, the threat of global warming, water shortages, famine, and the like would fit the bill. All these dangers are caused by human intervention, and it's only through changed attitudes and behavior that they can be overcome. The real enemy, then, is humanity itself. Let's go back to the important part. The only thing that they've looked at to be able to allow them to make you the animal, which becomes the problem that they're managing, and make you become not a man or a woman, is that they change your attitudes and your behavior. The Pentagon video of which explains they can adjust you at a DNA level. They literally reprogram you to be able to alter your behavior, which would certainly alter your attitude, since you don't care now. Or, more worse, you care like they care, which is to not care. Club of Rome, you can go read all this stuff. It's out there, folks. The humanity is versus man. Man stops this by maintaining man and not allowing himself to be behaviorally controlled, like being put in a cattle chute at the airport, and going through whatever they want to do to the cattle, the chattel, the property, the human resource that they have now created in you. Why? Because you acted like that human resource. You acted like the cattle. It is only through changed attitudes and behavior that they can be overcome. So then they work to strip you of your capacity to maintain an attitude, maintain the behavior, maintain your foundation. And so I'm kind of going a little bit long, a little bit slow. I hope you understand what I've been saying. It really came to fruition in here. If I didn't really have all the proof, the dots got connected a whole lot more close as to what's going on, exactly what I've been suggesting, even if I didn't have that proof. But see, I'm working on knowledge, wisdom, and then experience, experience and then the wisdom. And I come here to tell you what I can as it comes to me to tell you. Well, there is no script here behind Woodshed, that's for sure. I go on the tabs, just give me a reminder, because my memory's not so good. My memory's okay, but not so good. My memory's focused on a mission, so it doesn't lend itself well to all this. What looks to me on the tabs is just information. I'm only here to tell you. I already understand this. That's why we do what we do elsewise. So it takes a little special focus for me to come and talk to you all about this. But again, like Ron Stevens said, and I really got to work that out with him. How do you pronounce your name, Ron? That you're called to do this at some point. There's something bigger than us that's in us that comes to the front. And I don't even know. There's nothing to value there. It's just what it is. It's just what needs to be done. And I wish there was more of us that were doing it. And as I say that, I think I was reminded by Grimner. Again, we lost a broadcast. I didn't know about that. Sorry to hear that we lost a broadcast. But anyway, if you're into putting out, I would say more than just information. You want to really get to the core of what we're after, and can help explain to people what's happening that they need to hear to inspire them into action. What I call evolutionary engagement, not the revolution, things that go around, come around again. No, the evolutionary engagement with this thing that's come on us that we throw it off. If you are people that can do that, please step forward. Grimner can help you out how to set you up. We got plenty of hours on the network, I'm sure. So thank you, Grimner, for being there, doing all that. I do appreciate all that's going on there, whether or not I'm involved too much, during the week. So, scientists store an operating system, a movie, and a computer virus on DNA was the very next story that pops up. Now, this isn't even actually a new story, but it's actually it's a continuation of an older report that I gave you. But this is when I told you that they can not only remove or change your DNA. No, they're getting to the point they can reprogram it, literally. Scientists store an operating system, a movie, and a computer virus on DNA. You think they can do a computer virus? You think they can do a biological virus, folks? You think they got the DNA? They know about this DNA, all this DNA things, the studies they've been doing, the DNA sequences. You think they can't just program See, they said computer because they don't want to get you scared. They'll already be able to program anything on this DNA that you already have. And actually, this is a synthetic DNA as they work this thing through. It was said that they could. Now they have. It's very expensive, but they can. Now, they only do it from this standpoint of data storage. They want to tell you it's data storage on DNA. I'm suggesting to you they don't need to worry about the storage if all they want to do is reprogram you. And it's really not the old folks that are going to die. They're not going to put this kind of technology in the old folks. So my focus then turns to the little ones. And the little ones, you could be as little as 40 years old or younger, folks. So don't think too little is too far. You're elder at 46. So anything before that, kind of fair game. You're undomesticated wild beasts. Data, listen, just fantastic information here that we can just marvel at what man can do, but then we see what they are able to when we connect the dots a little closer. The future of data storage may be biological, and they can put so much data on the DNA. It's phenomenal. I mean, just beyond, folks, what they can do here, and they can now get it back off. So this is the story. They say it's scientists store operating system, movie, and computer virus on DNA. I'm saying that they have, on the Pentagon video, they tell you that they can actually put a virus in you, they can reprogram you, and you will behave differently, just like the Club of Rome said. So you may not agree with climate change. It doesn't matter whether you do. They're going to get your behavior in some other way. They get you focused that you think you're against climate change, like I'll talk about. Oh, we're kind of against it. But are you working to stop the rest of it? So you think that going against climate change makes you aware and awake and all the other nonsense names that everyone puts on themselves to think that they're standing on the pedestal. You don't realize that the rest of some other things that were more important to them have been contained and controlled. That's the thing that bothers me when I read the Protocols of Elders of Zion. I said, wow, what about that stuff I don't know they're doing to me? That I don't know that they know about me? That they're already working on me against me? Against me. I do it to myself because I'm not aware, and I may not have that capacity. So I have to work hard to go find it, see if it's there. And it's kind of like you're almost like looking for ghosts, but you're not. When you do this, you'll realize that you're not. There's certain things that come to you that start to become more proof that you're on that path that you need to be, that narrow path. As I was listening to Ron, he's talking about the To hit the ball out of the park, you have to hit the ball. You got to hit the right swing. It can't be too soon, too late. Can't be too high, too down. That's the narrow path, folks. As I was listening, I said, great, Ron. That's a nice analogy for people that are so, that reference baseball. You have to to make a success happen, you have to be on that narrow swing. It's a very narrow place that does that. Everything has to be just right. That's the razor's edge we're on. And you know what? We're like slugs when we get there. We can go right over the razor's edge when we're there, when we're in that moment. When we're doing that thing, we're in the zone. That zone is a narrow path. They have the ability to now pharmaceutically strip you of the capacity. And so the only other thing I can tell you, this move of the information to knowledge, if you don't start creating rituals for yourself and create your own mechanical religion, this is why rituals are so important. And this is why they're used. But in this state, the state of deception, or the state of confusion that we live, the governmental state of confusion or deception, we're going to have to start developing for ourselves the rituals that remind us of, if we couldn't remember, we just do it because, like the use of money, real specie, weight and measure, intrinsic value, durability, uncontrolled by others other than to commit crime against you, like the robber, the thief. We're going to have to, I can't see any other way. I just see this because of where we are today. And I look around and I see it getting worse, even though I've been around for, well, in mining, it's been over 12, 15 years now. I don't know what, it's been over a decade, well over a decade now. I stopped counting. I'm shocked. And the miners are still not getting it. They still fight with me. And then when I tell them what's going on, they won't respond. It's worse than crickets, folks. I talk to you. Crickets is the high mark. It gets worse. You then shut up. And that tells me one of a couple things. When and you're willing to be the criminal against yourself. And that's sad. That's not for me. That's for you. See, the judgment really goes away. I don't have to judge. This is either you figure this out and work for your own good, or you don't. And I'm telling you, it's coming to the time when they're programming you won't be able to, and we still might be able to persevere. You've got a spirit that's in you that I don't know that they can get rid of. Your thoughts and perceptions are different than that spirit that drives you. I absolutely know that. But you have to be on the intention. You have to hold an intention that makes you step in the right direction, and you have the tools and the rituals to continue to go. We tend to look at them, well, I do this study, and I go this, and I do here, and I'll research that, and I go through the statutes, and I go boom, boom. Those are rituals, folks, that keep you on the narrow path so you don't get persuaded away. But those are focused, in this case, in legal, understanding the enemy, and how we defeat it. That's for what I do. And it's not just there because it affects all our lives, so it's our lives I'm talking about, ultimately. Knowing that in a battle, in a war, there's no silver bullets. The best general can die. If you don't understand how precarious everything seems to be, and then they have the biowarfare to come after your very perceptions. Why your foundation is so absolutely important. Why the Constitution, whether or not I agree with lots of it or don't, there are fundamental principles that are spoken to that we are not told about, that I've had to extract through my studies, I tell you about as much as I can, that show that thing is there as a memorial when we lose our minds. That if we know that we've lost our minds and we finally get a little glimpse, because I think we're told that we then, whoa, I'm incapable. I'm under the influence. I have to go somewhere that's before all of this. I have to find something written that I can rely upon. That's what Bible's about in some regard. Now, it's read wrong, it's interpreted wrong, at least by my estimation. It's acted upon wrong. But there are certain principles that I can correlate through all natural law, even though usurpers lead by legal. They lead with their legal, and I can see that they're actually trying to mimic. Well, they're mimicking something that's a foundation. Wow, that's a secondary proof. If you can understand how I start thinking, there's all ways to prove these things. It's just a matter of whether you're open to them. They're taking away your ability to do this. Now, they have now the ability to literally program your DNA. They make a big deal about reading it back. I'm saying that what if they're not interested in reading it back? They just want to impose it upon you. It's already able to be done. Now, what might be doing this? What does the unzipping and the zipping and the modifications is also here. Shape-shifting molecular robots respond to DNA signals. So this is like bi- and trinary weapon systems that are coming to bear on us. I'm fascinated by it, folks. I get kind of excited just to see that the people can figure this out. But you know this is not being used for good when they're doing this. They'll claim it is. Oh, they're getting rid of autism and getting rid of this, and they don't tell you that they caused it. A self-inflicted wound to give them more money to transfer more value, more time, more parasitically sucking off the time of your life. Human resource. The Matrix is not a movie, folks. They take your energy and they substitute it for theirs. They parasitically feed an alien life form, like we found out. It's not carbon life. It's not even the one they found in the rocks last week I reported on, that we told miners are dealing with it all the time, sulfur-based or mineral-based life forms. No, this is your energy-based sucking parasitically off of your life. This is you being a resource that they pull from. Shape-shifting molecular robots respond to the DNA signals that they now tell you they can program in you with a vaccine or a rhinovirus, just a common cold. A research group out of Tohoku University in Japan Advanced Institute of Science and Technology has developed a molecular robot consisting of biomolecules such as DNA and protein. The molecular robot was developed by integrating molecular machines into an artificial cell membrane. I'm telling you, folks, you need a cell membrane. That's what makes you autonomous, makes different, so that you're not like the thing you're in, and then you can be running your own scam, or do better. You care, and you do something right. It can be start or stop its shape-changing function in response to specific DNA signals, if that doesn't bring on all kinds of sci-fi movies. It's not sci-fi anymore. And they're after you. They're after your behavior. They're telling us that. It's in the writings. At every point, they attempt to get your behavior controlled. And I'm telling you that they got you at the point of the shoot. They got you too late. I'm saying you're going to need to go ahead of all that. That's the administrative processes. You're going to need to have a clearer mind on how to approach that and expose the authority that is the pretext, felony, or treason against you, where we are supposed to have a better way than what is being offered to us today. Another way that they change us is now coming out in subtle acknowledgments, if not direct statements, but subtle acknowledgments of danger regarding. Remember, I was telling you that these creatures also of last week, these creatures can develop their cell walls. Their exoskeleton is made out of metals. In particular, one at least is a gold. And a report this week now, someone who worked the FOIA, folks. So here's again another response to all this, another potential help and tool: electromagnetic radiation safety. So these binary and trinary weapons can be triggered. Remember, back in the 50s, in the San Francisco Bay Area, they had a binary weapon. They oversprayed, did chemical spray, chemtrails in the atmosphere of San Francisco Bay, and then after the inoculation happened, they then have that very powerful Class B transmitter. I think I don't know if they have that there now. I can't remember now, but it used to be up at least 30 years ago, for sure. They had it's a very special Class B amplifier for up there on that hill that they've got that big tower. I can't remember the name of the Coit Tower, maybe. No, that's the tower. No, the antenna that's over there. And then once they inoculated the population, they then transmitted very particular electromagnetic radiation into the bay area there, and they were able to see that the inoculation, which was resting dormant in people, then was turned on by electromagnetic radiation, is what I see here. But they say it's really more of a more obvious problem. I'm suggesting to you that this is proving that there's an interrelation as well on top of this cell phone safety guidance from California Public Health Department, showing that cell phones and tests that the state itself acknowledged would give you brain cancer and other things. The cell phones was a secret guideline that they didn't publish, that was gotten from a FOIA by a doctor to explain that what goes on is not very healthy with these cell phones. And I'll talk about anything electromagnetic radiation. The smart devices all do this. In fact, they do the worst because they do high pulse type of transmissions, very short but high power duration. That these I'm suggesting to you they can program DNA, the DNA they programmed into you, but just on the surface of this, that it was just uncovered, and you'll get the links to all this. And I found this like Friday or something, I can't remember now. Available, and the documents available, the little brochure, 2-page brochure, where they actually comment that there's kinds of brain cancer that are activated by these EMFs, and there's other things. They go through a whole list of things, and they talk about fertility problems and all this other stuff. So again, these things called these little concentrated E-vial, these phones, any of this electromagnetic stuff, and that's all about all our computer things, are able to create obvious health actions. I'm trying to add the knowledge to you that they also do. They can be part of a binary weapon system in the minimum. If not, that they're not. If your DNA has been reprogrammed, how do you know how it's not being manipulated by electromagnetics in order to put out something that's needed? Now, for most of us, this is sci-fi. It's not necessarily happening to us. Although I look out in the world and I wonder, but I'm talking about direct control and this and that. That may be a little bit farther into the future. I'm telling you, like I've done before. I looked on a web page, found six new inventions that came out, and I said, "Wow, those are gonna be pretty quick to get a lot of money taken out of your bank account by the city for you going through a traffic light." Is the same thing I'm doing here with these different stories today. Point out that you may not be you tomorrow. I mean, I'm talking you tomorrow, not tomorrow in the future. I'm talking about you run across a certain condition. We are seeing the proof of the tools that you may walk through that same intersection, walk through the crosswalk, and may not be the same one you started in on when you get out the other way. The technology is here, the admissions are happening, and it's up to us to figure out, well, we can succumb and give up, or we can figure out what to do. And now, I don't say get all paranoid on it. Just understand that I told you this was a multi-dimensional onslaught and war. They're not joking. They're telling us they're in it for keeps. And what about those smart meters? Are they really smart, or are they just there to steal more from you in a different way? Back to your finances, your pocketbook. Not only are they able to pulse out massive amounts of energy that's not healthy, they now admit the cell phone alone can give you cancer, infertility problems, and all this, and other things. Electronic energy meters, false readings almost 6 times higher than actual energy consumption. So they're smart, but they're smart in how they steal money from you and give it to those that are the partners of the government that works against you. Because you remain to be crickets, or worse, silent. And crickets to me is silent, so it doesn't mean to me the gradation of lack of proper response is irrelevant to me. Energy meters can boost 6 times higher false energy consumption. Now, there's a couple of things. Not only the overt theft this is, but can you see when they can say your consumption is higher, they can then use it when they start controlling your household, they diminish you as well because you're not supposed to have a certain size footprint in carbon on this fallen and not proven hypothesis that has no way to prove itself, because you are the human animal that is the enemy. And you never took any steps to say you, the one that's telling me that, is a criminal, and you're going to go to jail, and I'm going to make sure I see that happen. Electronic meters, if you got the reports, you thought your power usage went up. Well, it wasn't that it went up, it's that the smart meters are smart enough to lie and get away with it until somebody checks it out. Here we are again. Took somebody to say, wait a minute, we got to check this out. It doesn't happen. These proofs and the crime against you is not witnessed until someone takes enough care and action to make themselves the witness and then do something about it. How many steps removed from actual proper action that information, all this information, interwebs, is the trap, folks. I try to bring the information into knowledge for you and then say, okay, now let's do something with the knowledge. And because it's a war field, a battlefield against us, even if it's someone just to want to rip you off for your power, they want more shekels in their pocket, you should be up against this. That there's a war against you in that area. You can't diminish that. And this is government-sanctioned theft. Again, you see the source of it. It never stops. And it only continues because there's no witness against it. And if there are witnesses, then they don't do the right thing. And that is another imposition. But so you do it. You figure out what most of it is. Make the records that you can make. Electronic controls. We got biopharmaceutical controls. They're telling you they can mess with your DNA and they can program it in real time. This is so much more terrorizing than I was thinking about the epigenetic change. Like, well, maybe we'll wear masks, and keep the aerosols down. Maybe we won't get vaccines. Maybe that'll be enough, but it's not. They have all these different ways at us. And so without getting all paranoid sounding, you start taking measures to limit how they do this. And as I say, start to become active now, so you're at least the habit of what you do continues, even if you start to be diminished. John Rappaport kind of comes on this as well. Again, the gentleman's right on it. I'd like to have a conversation with him. He'd probably just tell me all the things I appreciate and what he does. So we're kind of walking the same path, but he's walking his path, and we're finding very similar things. He finds it in his way, how the mind treats impossible things that couldn't be happening. I found an interesting thing, a discussion in line with what I'm telling you today, that even there's a psychological condition that even if you think you're squared up with how things work, you think you have a clear way at something and your critical thought, that your psychology, you will deceive yourself and negate. In other words, you'll listen to me and then dismiss me because you're wired to do that and you did that to yourself. And he has an example he talks about, and he brings up that report I told you that he brought up, the study that said that 9.5% of all deaths in the United States occur annually due to doctors' errors. Remember that report? Think about that. 1/10 of every death in the United States is caused by a doctor. And they call it an error, and I told you that's just a way to get out of liability. Errors are not actionable. Think about that. The medical profession causes 1 death out of 10 in the United States. And so his discussion was based on that objectively proven fact when he was talking with people who were in the media business and other people, and he would make that comment. They would not address the comment and would always talk about something else. They would attack him, or they would not answer the question. They would come up with new subject matter to avoid having to understand what it means when you understand that a doctor kills 1 in 10 people every year. There's a doctor involved with one of those deaths. Now they're the same ones that talk about vaccines, say you need to have a vaccine, right? What do I say? Get your product insert. Challenge them on that if you got nothing else. If you're left with nothing else, challenge them on that. Objective black and white is one of the main things that they can't do. That's, in my mind, law. Even if it's inside the legal system, that's the objective basis. And if you find a harm, they can't force you into that. And you better be able to say that. And if you understand to do that by rote, by ritual, even if you forget, you'll be doing it by accident. But a very interesting story. But if you all think that you're clear thinking, and you all think that you are motivated or whatever, you have in you the tool that will defeat you and justify it. And for those of you that would dismiss what I'm saying or not listen or turn away or not want to hear it, this is a problem in everyone. This is those things that we don't really understand or we deny in ourselves, which defeat us. We have to defeat in us. It takes a lot of work that way. But once you get past it, once you beat that down, it's okay. That's a weakness I have. I will not become a debtor to that weakness. It is how this is overcome in each one of us. So what do we have in talk about behavior? What do we have talking about imposition and ritual? What do we have here that constrains us in a society that we agree to, whether or not we practice or not, and then living in a society that's open to let just about anything happen? Even our destruction. See, I hope you understand the dynamic of that. Your destruction is a consent as well. Pretty, and the other side will say you asked for it, and you agreed. that along with this behavioral control and societal pressure, and it's really now a criticism of getting too much into the left-right paradigm or thinking that the right is right and the left is wrong, is my concern, not a business concern, but a concern, interest to keep track of how we lull ourselves into being right and then we make the wrong decisions, or we allow our behavior then to support bad decisions, bad things that don't appear to be bad, and even bringing it up, the critique would make me sound bad for bringing it up. Here's the interesting thing that diversity brings on. We were talking about this a little bit last night in the chat, RLM chat, that social justice. It said when social justice becomes censorship, I came back and I said, but social justice is censorship. That the video was of a psychologist who censored himself. He didn't even want to be shown on the video talking about social justice. I had to laugh at. Pretty self-proof. That we have these censorships in society that go unchecked and then attacked or whatever in certain ways. And while we're attacking those that may look like lunatics, and they are, and they may be justified in attacking, we forget that we got to be careful not to allow something to happen underneath our belief that because we may have been right on the first attack, that we're right in attacking all that don't meet our perception, which you may or may not be having adjusted by some pharmaceutical or some electromagnetic dynamic or whatever. It's bad enough that we do it to ourselves, let alone that we can have an external influence we don't know is doing us, like the protocols of Zion tells us is our human frailty that they will exploit. Not the Zionists, forget all that political nonsense. I'm talking about people that want to hurt you. People that get into the psychopathy or sociopathy or just the mere wanting to be a prophet. You think that we're not in a voluntary commerce system, economy system? You're not paying attention. This is almost the epitome of that. Everything is open game on anyone. That this little thing came up at the same time, and I'm looking at behavior and how we respond societally. People that I agree, for the most part, would have a proper view of things, may go over a bit. And we're not checking ourselves on our side, if there's a side at all. That this little report talks about some things that I'm not interested in the information more than the response to it. Ex-Clinton volunteer slammed, loses job after swipe at widow of fallen SEAL. Apparently there was this little get-together that Trump had, the joint session of Congress that he spoke at, and there was this wife of a Navy SEAL, and she was given a tribute to the fact that her husband had been killed in Yemen. Now, there's a lot already to discuss about this. What the heck are we doing in Yemen? Now, forget all that. What came out of that in this title, that somebody who made a comment, well, I'll read it. Let me see if I can find it. Darn it, I didn't have it there. Well, they certainly have Trump's response pretty quickly. He calls it hatred. In fact, the guy was calling out, said, sorry, Owen's wife, you're not helping yourself and your husband's memory by standing there and clapping like an idiot. Trump just used you. And this comment got nailed for being whatever it was, and disrespectful and hate and all this. And I'm looking at this, and it's distasteful, absolutely distasteful. And then I take that advisedly also. What are we doing in Yemen? So, at any rate, somebody acted on their belief system, and they're fighting for a country that they believe is doing peace and justice by posing bombs and shooting people. And he dies in the service to his country, or it's not his country, the corporation. And so I got lots of questions about that. But I'm focusing on the thing that we look past, that a lot of what I would call the right side, the right-leaners, in the political right, not right and correct, came out and they respond by slamming this guy. This guy loses his job for making an opinion about something. right or wrong, and I agree it was distasteful. But what did that soldier supposedly die for that wasn't his right to be able to say what he said and our right to disregard it? That someone would pay a penalty for speaking their opinion, rightly or wrongly. That I thought that the response to this guy expressing himself in condemnation, universal condemnation, and without any, if I can say, public dialogue on the totality for why he would have died, was itself a violation that people missed, that they think they're correct in addressing as a herd, a nationalism, another type of religion, a patriotism that actually defeats the reason why we're here to be able to do it. Caused me to respond to this story in Twitter, and any of you that want to follow is Behind a Woodshed. I responded this way to the fact of people nailing someone expressing his feelings, rightly or wrongly, about the soldier who was the widow being given some reference in a national speech. That I was becoming confusider and confusider. And I asked the poster, so what again did a soldier die for if we're no longer free to express something distasteful? I really am becoming confused. What's the point? What was the death that he died for ostensibly that we can't communicate about our disagreement with it? That the people that support Trump, I think, are making a very big mistake in not watching the bar that they are now lowering. Now, I feel that I should be respectful of a man's death under what he chose. I also have the other side of me that says, what are you doing over there? Thou shalt not kill comes prevalent. What's your purpose? Don't give me your pretext. I have a little different analysis. I'm not going to do it here. There's a lot of thought behind this that troubles me terribly. But I'm confusider and confusider about this. Why would you attack a guy who is the guy that supposedly the soldiers fighting for freedom of expression? And why would you cause the man to lose everything in his life because he said something that you didn't agree with? It's no different to me than the social justice that we hear from the so-called left, working and killing everything, destroying everything, causing the so-called chaos. It's not. It's a division planned for your consumption. If we don't start setting our foundational bar in the right spot, we're going to walk ourselves into promoting the very thing that we thought we were fighting or resisting not just a few months ago. And so, I guess I'll say it. I don't really mean it in this regard. Shame on you. But, that's a soft shame on us. This is how we are. We got to do a whole lot better. What did that soldier die for but for the freedom of expression that's now condemned, and the one that wants to say, in other words, the one that burnt the flag gets condemned. Now, I know about the flag. To tell you the truth, I don't wave the flag to burn it. I just condemn what it stands for as we are being presented with. I'll burn it in other ways. I'll step all over what you thought you were supporting in your blind nationalistic patriotism to get us to the better spot to say, wait a minute, this was about us, not that entity in Washington, D.C. Where have we failed to allow that? Why lots of questions, almost 1,000 questions just flash in front of my mind about all the questions that we have allowed in us that we're supposed to be so right, correct thinking that we miss. Really disappointment. The gentleman freely expressed himself and then was, by the mob, condemned. To the point that he shut down his Twitter, shuts down everything, loses his job, all this damage just because he voiced an opinion, for right or for wrong. Cannot reflect well on what that soldier died for, in my mind. And what did he die for? We move over to another country, all in the Middle East. What is this? If we're going to go to a better public dialogue about the nonsense that we see that goes on, people might be dying for no good reason under the pretext of dying for things that are the quality that the things that we want. There are no moderate rebels. Tulsi Gabbard destroys the deep state Syria narrative. Folks, this is she's going on. This is a Hawaiian representative going on to explain. She went over to Syria, got a bunch of Loganak jumped on her. I think she's actually a Democrat. See, they're just tools. These things are tools against people. She's trying to tell us that there is no moderate rebels, that these people that support them like McCain are no good. We have to stop supporting. The United States has to stop paying it. And she's doing her best inside her position. I don't necessarily agree with her politics, but she's someone that's stepping up and not agreeing with what she's saying. That if there's no moderate rebels, it starts to point out what did that soldier die for. That the one who called it out for whatever his reasons were, it may not even be my reasons that I'm seeing as I'm having trouble with, was vilified to the extent that it essentially destroys his life, his way of life. He's going to have to go find another life. That there's another politician saying, we have a problem, folks. We're vilifying people that we're fabricating and we're using to justify our damage, our harm, under this thing called democracy, which is mob rule. You're divided. We are going to destroy you because you're never going to be a unified people under one law. You're going to be under rule. Because you failed to have your own rule, your internal rule. You allowed us to take care of you. And we deny anybody who tries, like the other report following here, a shipment of 17,394 tons of wheat is sent by Russia to the Syrian people. You never hear about what Russia's been doing to support and keep those people fed, while the United States supports what they call moderate rebels. It is us, folks. We went through this over and over. What did the soldier die for? That someone that calls out and said that they're being used by Trump shouldn't have caused, wait a minute, what's the truth of that part? That the political right, so-called, jumped on and then agrees with the destruction that may have no legitimate cause. That pretext I talked to you about all the time, but again in this broadcast early on. Where is the promotion that Russia's doing anything to help Syria? We're talking the people, not the government, folks. This is the people that should be being helped, the ones that we complain that the wall is being built up as we bomb them. As our soldiers go and kill them, they run because they're not soldiers. And then we build a wall to keep them out. I'm not saying bring them home. I'm saying we are the cause. Stop it. Stop meddling. Was a certain thing of wisdom that would happen? Don't get into foreign engagements, folks. Did we lose that memory? Did we lose that we're not supposed to do that? Did we lose that narrow path that kept everything on a more peaceful level, that kept our costs down, that kept our warring way down, that kept us from being a warring people? We're not looking anymore, as I thought it flashed in my mind, but we were told that the Khazars, the ones, the people that call themselves Jews now, were a warring people. We look like them. And that should tie a bunch up for you that I won't do here. Syria's water cut off by Turkey following McCain and Erdogan meeting. Why would you cut off some people's water? Who is McCain? Is he now a tool for Trump to foist upon them the fact that we need to have soldiers dying for something that isn't really going on? Is he working on his own? If he's working on his own, why isn't this guy McCain stopped? He's committing a treason against us. Why isn't these questions being asked? What is the relationship between the water being cut off by Turkey and land that's invading another country? Can you imagine, folks, if it could, Canuckistan taking over Minnesota, Minneapolis, and just start moving into Manhattan? Oh, we're going to cut off we're going to redirect the Niagara Falls. What is this nonsense that we allow and don't allow? It wouldn't happen elsewhere, that happens elsewhere in other places, and we think that's okay. And then we find in a week, not even a week, folks, just days, McCain Institute tax file of 2014 showing $300,000 given by Rothschilds and $1 million by the Saudis. As we see McCain today over there cutting water off to people through Turkey in support of the Saudi, Qatar support of this invasion of Syria. All washing our hands of any wrong when one of our own politicians says, no, it's not working that way. It's not what we're being told. Stop supporting the so-called moderate rebels. There's no such thing. It's an invention by the people like McCain and the Saudis and Qatar and, should I have to say it, Israel. I guess I did. That we also see another report here. We can talk at information, or we can start applying the knowledge and come to a more rational approach to an insane condition. That's why you got to be careful not to engage the insane, but you have to understand it. A French activist in Aleppo's open letter to Francois Hollande, the lie about the Syria war is too big. Quite a read. Another listing of things that are going on. It comes in the disgust of this reporter and what he's watching between what we're told at home, so-called, them in France, and what's going on in the field. The distinction that Gabbard found when she went and physically went there, got her eyes on the ground, if you will. Not took it through some internet feed, some NSA feed, some CIA feed, not even from behind the woodshed. Went and got the black and white, got the reality in her eyes. How many people are doing that anymore? Is this information age? It's not knowledge. It's not experience, and then it's not wisdom. It's how they're defeating us. That this journalist is coming out to explain the duality of the stories that this so-called fake news, this deception, of lack of disclosure, and what I say is then the transparency. I don't even think if people will get this. I send this stuff out on Twitter and I don't get any response. It's not, they were talking about transparency, and I said, but transparency is when you can't see the criminal doing the crime. You want disclosure. You don't want you don't want modernization either. You don't want transparency. This is all the academic words. In fact, I heard James Corbett talking about he was talking about the useless eaters and where that came from. He didn't go far enough. He would have pointed himself back till today. The origins of that came from two academics. Academia is what we sued to stop. The university system in this country, United States of America. The academics come up with this nonsense. The urban-rural divide is a false issue that they bring in and inject into your world, and that becomes real then. It's another stakeholder. James Corbett didn't go far enough. He didn't see it, so therefore he's only giving information. He's not telling you the roots of this, and then I come along to try and say, hey, he's got to do more, and you need to do more. Here's what's going on. Don't focus on the useless eaters like you now all of a sudden know something because someone said so. No, find out that it's still working today. This thing that was developed back in the 20s and before, but at least the date of that phrase. It was created by academics. You have to understand what's going on in that. Now I gave you knowledge. What are you going to do with it? Now you still have to research the information I just told you to prove it's out and find the connection so that it's beyond information. It's knowledge. Then what are you going to do about it? How are you going to make that real in your world? How are you going to find out that maybe the soldiers dying around you are dying for no actual cause, and it wasn't their fault? They chose on the information that was disclosed to them. The heinousness was transparent. So I tell some pretty high-minded people, minded people that sound really respected on the Twitter, it's not transparency, it's disclosure we're looking for. And they come back and use the word transparency. I don't know what to say more, folks. I'm doing my best. Doing my best behind the woodshed. What little bitty forum I have here. That we see these gangs of nations getting up and beating down on people and promoting something that we believe gives us the nationalistic fervor to condemn a man who writes a Twitter of all 140 characters, and not even that, against what he believes is is a psyop, I suppose, it is a scheme and a scam using somebody. And he gets condemned for it. Is that same nationalistic fervor that was condemned in the liberals, that's condemned wherever you see it, it was condemned in the Nazis, and then they blame this stuff on what we see as becoming Nazistic, and that's even wrong. Those people in Germany, as I can research it, they were looking for someone that had a better answer than their apathy and their indulgence in their own fallen nature. That coming today, you may not have the ability to know because they have the tools to take that right out of you down to your DNA level in the time it takes for an aspirin to come under effect. That these people, these nations are working as gangs, the cops work as gangs, the government works as a big gang, organized criminal syndicate, I call it. If I didn't need more proof, there's a story now on it. 1930s-style gangsters, 7 police officers indicted and arrested on federal racketeering charges. You get the link. You can read about it all. It's in Baltimore. Hans, it's in Baltimore. Where were you? Making the record. See, we can all be here making records about this stuff. Not to blame. Just saying that there's things we can pick up. Maybe it's not important, but there it was. Violating people. Gangsters in the blue line is a gangster border. And I hear crickets everywhere. More proof of it. The fractal, folks. What happens by the United States happens everywhere within the United States. If you've got the United States being the head gang master in the world, you're going to have it in your locales wherever you are. And it may be the shameful thing that you're not able to know it because your DNA was changed. Just before I started talking this hour, you went out and took a big sniff of the air. You took a bite of some apple, some GMO apple, and you're gone. You went over and you started watching the unicorn and dancing on a rainbow and the butterflies and all that was fascinating to you. So in that time that we were talking, that I've been talking to you. I'm asking us to get the tools that we need to start working them, start to get at the point where we have. They're working hard to take us out and multidimensionally. It's not a paranoia. It's the fact. And I think we can, well, I don't know. I'm here to say different, so I suppose that it didn't happen to me yet. How long are we going to wait before it happens to us or our little ones, the ones that are coming on? How absent are we going to be in all this? That's up to us, not up to me. It's up to each one of us to make that decision on where we're going to jump in. Where do we stop them? When do we become men and women, a man and a woman, that it counters as an enemy against the humanity they're creating in you, the animal nature that they take advantage and exploit? You have to understand, if you're not a man and woman with responsibility and acting that way, you have to understand you are being treated as the animal they've made you into. Whether that's still by pharmaceuticals or whatever, your own apathy. Thank you for tuning in today. Hope something I said gets you inspired, or beat down a little bit to rethink your position and then be inspired to go take better action in the world. Thank you, Grimner, for what you do. RealLibertyMedia.com, and keeping all the archives and things going. And Grammy Mary on the Spreaker account, thank you for your donations there. FreedomsNetwork.com for social network, and maybe get together and maybe come together on doing better action faster. That would be kind of cool. And Jules at UCY.tv, thank you very much for you running the broadcast as a pastcast broadcast, or again, this broadcast on Thursday as an original. And all you terrestrial broadcasters, thank you very much for what you do. And I'll be here next week, tech diffs, nature willing.
Well, that's another lesson. I hope with today's information you can take it to those that misbehave. From behind the woodshed, leaving his mark on the beast, this is Hal Anthony. Till next time, journey with purpose.
That's what opening up a can of whoop-ass feels like. Son, you just opened a whole case of whoop-ass.
This is JJ Against the Law.